Hello students, welcome back into the another session of object-oriented programming using C++. Students, in the last lecture we discussed about the structure of C++ program. We have seen how the different parts of the C++ program can be arranged. So we began with the header files, then we had the global declaration section, then we had the class section, and in that afterwards we declared functions and other parts of the C++ program. We discussed this code in the last lecture. This code prints hello onto the screen. Today we will see some details about this code. So the first line over here is hash include iostream.h. Now here hash is nothing but the preprocessor directive. Now you already have studied preprocessor directive in the C. The same concept has been carried forwarded in the C++ also. Now what is the preprocessor directive? So here you can break down this term preprocessor. So before the processing will begin, you have to include something. And what you have to include? So you have to include this iostream.h header file. So here before the compilation will begin, there is a linking phase. So during that linking phase, you have to include this file within your code. If you don't include this file in the linking phase and if you go in the compilation phase, then there will be an error on this cout line. So in order to execute this cout line perfectly, we have to include iostream.h file. And before you will go for the compilation, this file needs to be included. And for that, this hash is included over here. So this hash states the compiler that this file needs to be included before the compilation will begin. So this particular file iostream.h needs to be included within the code in the linking phase of the program. So this iostream.h file we have already seen in the last lecture. iostream stands for input output stream. So here in the C++ we consider input and output in the form of stream. So that is nothing but in the form of bits. So when we get the data or when we send the data, we send it in the form of small bits. So that's why it is called as a stream. So one after the other, bits are sent or received. So that's why it is treated as a stream. And when we have to use some of the functions, then we have to use input output stream.h files for performing input output related functions. So here the next line states int main. So this is nothing but a main function. Now as I told you in the earlier lecture, here return type should be integer. So here we are saying that this particular function is going to return some value and that value will be of type integer. In earlier cases of the C, we can write down void main over here. So that void means we are not going to return anything. But from the C++ onwards, we have adopted one standard that every function or every program will return something. And if that is a main function, it is going to return something. So that's why we have used int over here. So we started with int main. Then here in this bracket there is nothing. So that this main function is not going to receive any value from the outside world. So that's why it is blank. But if from the outside we have to send some data to main, we can send it through this particular parenthesis. In that case, we have to use parameters over there. Within that parameters, data will be received. Now coming to the next point, we have cout. So cout is nothing but object. So here C stands for C character out. So character out, that's why it is cout. So it is nothing but an object of iostream class. So there are two classes inside in the iostream.h file. There is a istream and there is a ostream. So when we have to give certain things as an output, we have to use ostream class. And we have to get something as an input, we have to use istream class. So here this cout is specifically an object of ostream class. Now we don't know much about the objects. But as we know, C++ is an object-oriented language. That's why we have to use this object. So this object is readily available for us in order to put something onto the screen. Now here C stands for character and out stands for out. So this particular thing should be as an output. Then we have the insertion operator over here. This particular operator is called as an insertion operator. So it is going to insert something into the output stream. So what it is going to insert into the output stream? So that is nothing but this hello. So hello is nothing but a string, or it is nothing but a strings of characters which is going to be inserted into the cout. So cout is actually directing to the console, that is nothing but the output. So whatever you will insert through that will go on to the output console. One way of looking at it, this operator is nothing but the way in which the data is flowing. So here you can see how the data is flowing. So hello, and this particular data is flowing towards output. So this particular data is going to cout, and cout is actually pointing out to the output screen. So this hello will be printed onto the output screen. This is clear, I think. Then we have output statement over here. This is nothing but a comment. Now all of you know that comments are meant for the documentation purpose only. So when you write down a bigger program, in that case you want to explain the logic behind writing down the code. So in that you write down the comments. So this is multi-line comments. Similarly, you can have a single line comments also. If I will use this / 2 times, that will become a single line comment. Single line comments in the sense that comment will be valid only for that line. On the next line, it will not be treating it as a comment. These comments are not processed by the compilers. These are ignored directly. So while doing the compilation, compiler will ignore these comments. It will not process it. And these comments are only meant for the understanding purpose. So when a programmer or another team member will join you during the programming, they will understand that for what purpose this particular line is written or this code is written. So that's why this commenting is essential. Always have a good practice of writing down comments after writing every function. So when you will write down a function, always mention comment over there, so that once you will have that habit, afterwards also you will adopt it in the real world. Hope it is clear to you. Let's discuss this point, reserved words and keywords. This concept we have already discussed in C. The same concept has been carried forwarded in the C++ also. So here keywords are nothing but some special words whose meanings are already defined. You are not supposed to use these words to create any variable or to give any name to your functions. The reason because these words are specific words whose meaning is already known to compiler, and compiler will start interpreting once these words will appear in that particular way. So integer, float, double, character, constant, then void, return, all these are nothing but the keywords. If you start using these words in a normal way for creating a variable, then compiler will start confusing about it. So you have to avoid that confusion. So you should not use these words while you will create variables or when you will give the names to the functions. So these words are specific whose meanings are already defined. That's why we call it as a keywords, or we call it as a reserved words. So these are reserved. You shouldn't use them anywhere else until unless they are absolutely essential on that place. So if I wanted to create a variable, I will use int num. So int is essential over there because my compiler knows how to work with int in that case. But let's say suppose I wanted to create a function, and in that I will give the name to that function as a int. In that case, compiler will not be able to understand the difference between the name given to that function and int used in earlier cases when you created the variable. So in both of these scenarios, the way you used int is very different, and you shouldn't confuse your compiler with that things. So that's why always it is recommended this particular words, all keywords shouldn't be used as a normal identifiers. To that we have another question, then what is an identifier? So let's get into that point. Identifiers, as its name itself is telling you, it is there to identify something. Now in order to identify something, we are using identifiers. Now if we have to go in a detail to understand this, when we are creating any variable, we are allocating certain space in the memory. Now, when we are allocating the space in the memory, there are hundreds of variables we can create. So how we will identify each and every variable uniquely? So for that we have their addresses. But in order to remember these addresses, again it will become difficult for a programmer. So we have used the concept of identifier. Ideally we should remember addresses of these variables so that whenever we will need them, using these addresses we can identify them. But it will be difficult to remember all these addresses, so that's why we started using another level of abstraction. To that we called as an identifier concept. So we will start identifying these memory addresses using some names. To those we will call it as an identifier. So for example, I wanted to put two variables. I wanted to create two integer variables. So I will simply say integer int num1 comma num2. So that is nothing but an identifier. Num1 over here is identifier. Num2 is nothing but another identifier. Num1 is identifying the unique space in the memory where I can store another integer. Num2 is another location where I can store integer. So identifier is used to identify something into the program. And more specifically, identifiers are used to identify the memory locations when you will create variables. Again, another use of identifier is to identify the functions. Now you know functions are nothing but a collection of statements we have put together under the single box or under the single block. Okay, so when we wanted to identify all this block by using name, then we can use the identifier. So the function name that we use is nothing but identifier. So let's say suppose I wanted to add numbers and I am using function void sum. So in that case sum is nothing but the identifier, because that sum, that name is identifying that entire block of code. Because of that identifier, it has become easy for me to remember these all blocks of codes just using single name. That is sum, that sum will identify all these blocks of codes or all these statements. So it consists of letters, digits and a underscore character. Then there is a restriction that it should begin with a letter or underscore. You cannot begin with a number or special symbols. That is not allowed. Then in the C++ and even in the C also, identifiers are case sensitive. Means number written in capital and number written in small case are different identifiers. This number is not same as this number. The reason because this number is written in capital letters. So this number is another identifier. This number is another identifier. They are not same. Here are some examples of legal and illegal identifiers. Here first we are looking at the legal identifiers. So this first, convert 12, pay rate, all these are nothing but the valid and legal identifiers. The reason because these identifiers are following all the rules that we discussed in the last PPT. Now here we have some illegal identifiers also. So here employee salary. Now here we have used the space. So that's why it is illegal identifier, because according to valid identifier rules we cannot use space in between. If we wanted to use the space, we can use the underscore like this, but we cannot leave the white space over here. Hence this has become a illegal identifier. Then this hello and exclamation mark, this is again invalid identifier or illegal identifier. The reason because exclamation mark is not allowed, because this is nothing but symbol and we cannot use symbol while we are creating identifier. So this is again illegal identifier. 1 plus 2, this plus cannot be used. Again it is nothing but a symbol, hence we cannot use it as a legal identifier. Hence 1 plus 2 entirely will become illegal identifier. This second, here we use 2, which is a number. We cannot start with a number. Hence this is again illegal identifier. These are data types which we have in the C++. So we have integer data type. As we know, there are many variations of integer. we have just considered two variations over here, signed and unsigned, but there are many, like shorts are there, then integer signed short, unsigned shorts. So we can have these many combinations. But for the simplicity, we have considered two variations over here, that is signed and unsigned. By default, when you use integer without having any specific prefix, then that is a signed integer. Signed integer is nothing but when you can have ranges from negative to positive. Both ranges you can cover over here. Okay, and it covers 4 bytes in the memory. And depending upon that, you have range over here. So this range comprises from the negative numbers to the positive numbers. But when we don't want to use the negative range, in that case we can use unsigned integer. Unsigned in the sense the integer which doesn't have any sign. If it doesn't have any sign, it is by default plus. So it considers only positive range. So you have 0 to only positive range. This 10 digits figure is there. So that much range is applicable if you are using unsigned integer. The reason this range is bigger because of we are not considering the negative range. So this particular specific type unsigned integer will only focus on the positive range. So you will get more capacity in the positive range. So that's why unsigned integers can focus more on the positive range. But if we have to deal with the negative range also, then we will use signed integer. Or we can use only integer. If you are using only integer, by default they are signed integers. Then if you wanted to work with the floating point numbers, now integers are nothing but a whole numbers. Okay, they cannot store the fractional value. But if we wanted to work with the fractional value, then we have a floating numbers. So that is nothing but a float. Okay, so float are also coming into different variations. If we wanted to work with the small range of the floating type value, then we can use the 4 bytes of float and it will cover this much range. 3.4e plus minus to 38, that is up to 7 digits. So that is very big number actually. Okay, but if you are not even satisfied with that range, then we can double the size of float using double. So this is nothing but a double data type. It occupies more capacity, more space into the memory. So it is nothing but 8 bytes. But range it will cover is more. Or in earlier case of float, it was covering only 7 digits. Now it will cover more than 15 digits. So that much capacity it is having in the double. More specifically, we will always go with the float because we don't require that precision or we don't require that bigger range. But if you are working with any scientific range or scientific work, in that case you might need double also. Then in order to work with the character alphabets, we have a character data type. So it occupies only 1 byte. The reason because 1 byte, because here we use ASCII representation of the characters. Okay, so it can have a range from 0 to 255. So all the data, all the characters that we represent will be represented using these values, either of these values 0 to 255. So each character will occupy only 1 byte into the memory. And then we have a boolean value over here. That boolean value will store true or false as its representative value. So sometimes we wanted to represent something as a true or false. In that case, we can use boolean as a data type. So bool is nothing but a data type which is directly supported in the C++. So it occupies 1 byte because what actually it stores is 1 and 0 only, 1 or 0. So if it is 1, so that means it is true. If it is 0, it means it is false. So accordingly, compiler will interpret it. Now different compilers may allow different ranges of values because how the compiler is represented, on which platform compiler is designed to work, according to that it will behave. There are few compilers which are designed to work only on the 16-bit systems. There are some compilers that works on the 32-bit systems. There are many compilers nowadays which we have, those are working on the 64-bit systems. So depending upon the underlying systems, compilers are designed. And depending upon how they are designed, these ranges may vary. In upcoming session, we will study these data types in more detail. Till then, keep studying. Thank you.